If everybody can hear me, we are going to get started. And while you're finishing up your last moments of conversation, I would love you to take this time to silence your cell phones. I will give you a few moments to do that. Everybody good? All right. Welcome to our annual Fall Focus event. My name is Amy Zeskin, and I am the president of National Council of Jewish Women Michigan. It's great that you're all here. You know the work that we do, and if you don't, let me just take a quick moment to brag. We are a grassroots organization that does incredible work in the community. We do advocacy work, we do service action projects, and we are just a dynamic group of people, and if you're not already involved, I will tell you to please, please join us because it's fun every single day, even when it's hard. So I do want to say a huge thank you to Edie Rubin and Sue Rollinger, who are the co-chairs of tonight's event. Very well-deserved applause. Also on their committee are Barbara Hillman, Sharon Leider, Janice Sobel, Sandra Silver, and Eva Hepner is their vice president, and they have done an incredible job, and you are in for a real treat today. If you are looking for ways to get involved, I'm always available to talk to, but those names I just mentioned, they're incredible resources, so pump them for information if you want that. As this is one of our 2 general meetings of each year, I want to inform you that we have no issues to be voted on at this time. Yeah, right? That's right. We are 4 months into our fiscal year, and we are doing really well. Our resale shop is celebrating 90 years in business. Yeah, and we have an expansion of our store beginning very soon. Just this fiscal year, we have already completed a handful of very successful projects and programs. They include the Backpack Project, our Games Day, the Back to School Store, our annual Women of Vision benefit luncheon, a lot of voting advocacy work, our weekly Wrapped in Love project, and so much more. So looking ahead, if any of you want to chime in, we have our Lunch with the Author, our annual giving campaign, numerous committees, programs, and volunteer opportunities, and we have a 90th resale celebration in June. I would like to extend a warm welcome to a few people, Lior Ziser-Yogov, Dr. Ora Peskovitz, and Gil Hoffman for joining us tonight. Your presence, participation in tonight's event, and support are greatly appreciated. We are beyond thrilled to have Danny Gilman being honored tonight with the Advocacy Award. Thank you to Danny's family for sharing Danny with us at NCJW because we are very lucky to have her. I now ask Fran Grossman to come up to the bima, and thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Amy. Good evening, and welcome to all of the National Council of Jewish Women Michigan supporters, friends, and family. And thank you to Edie Rubin and Susan Rollinger as co-chairs and the Israel Affairs Committee for creating this most informative meeting. My name is Fran Grossman, and I am honored to begin this evening with the presentation for the second recipient of the Advocacy Award. This award is given to a person who has exhibited outstanding efforts in advocating for the community at the state level and as well as the national level. They improve the lives of women, children, and families by safeguarding individual rights and freedom through educating and mobilizing grassroots advocacy. Do you know the person who was vice president of JARC Board of Directors, fellow of the Anti-Defamation League, Glass Leadership Institute, fellow of Legacy Heritage Foundation On Board Program, board member of Jewish Community Relations Council, board member of Jewish Federation Young Adult Division. Do you know the person who created special programs and projects such as Birdhouse for Autism Project, which is a smartphone app created by her to help parents raise a child with autism and other disabilities? How about the Flag Project, which stands for Frontline Appreciation Group, helping the frontline workers during COVID? She connected local restaurateurs and raised $450,000, providing 65,000 warm meals to frontline workers during COVID, as well as creating comfort care kits at National Council of Jewish Women. This was her initiative to help anyone exercising their right to an abortion, letting them know they're never alone. They are entitled to a comfort care kit, providing them with items to give them comfort and care during a most difficult time in their lives. And oh, by the way, these funds were provided through her family's name fund, which she set up. Do you know the person who presently is the board chair of Gesher Human Services, delegate to the Michigan Department of Special Education Advisory Committee, the Democratic Precinct delegate to Bloomfield Township, legislative liaison for Corton Elementary PTA, I know I'm embarrassing you, and on the executive cabinet board of NCJW Michigan. Not to mention her other most important roles as a full-time wife, a mother to two beautiful children, Brody and Julian, and a daughter and sister. The answer to all these projects, programs, and titles belong to one outstanding, very young woman, Danny Gilman. Clearly, by definition of this award and all of her above accolades, she has been committed to helping the lives of so many women, children, and families throughout our community and at the state level. I have had the absolute honor of working with Danny these past years at National Council, and I cannot be happier to see her honored tonight. Without further ado, please join me in presenting this award and honoring Danny Gilman. Please come. So well deserved.
Wow, thank you. That's, I'm quite the overachiever, if you can't tell. Thank you so much. I'm absolutely humbled by this award, especially coming from a group of women who are just incredible advocates. I'm so grateful to be a part of this group. I have often said that as a Libra, which is represented by the scale, I am hardwired to respond to injustice. And I joke, but I've really always been compelled to respond to what I have perceived as injustice. I've always wanted to get in there and make things right. As a teenager, growing up in Los Angeles in the 90s, I became active in an HIV and AIDS peer education program. I saw that a certain group of people were being scapegoated as a result. I was able to understand that educating people and bringing them a better understanding was the best way to make a difference. I took this lesson and have used it in every advocacy effort since. Educating others, meeting them where they are, and encouraging understanding can lead to a more compassionate and just society. I wear a red ribbon tattoo to remind me not only of where this fire in me began, but also that my commitment to doing good is permanent. This award is so special to me because it comes from the incredible women of NCJW Michigan. When I came to know these women, I was in awe. These are strong, determined women willing to get into action in order to help other women, children, and families, people that they don't even know, because it's the right thing to do. As a transplant to the Detroit area from Los Angeles, go Dodgers, I quickly got involved in community service, and I stay active in the community. I've taken on many leadership roles and positions, but my most critical role is being Julian's and Brody's mom. I'm grateful that I get to be an example to them and that they don't mind coming along to marches, rallies, events, and tiptoeing around when I'm on Zoom calls. My most important advocacy work is done every day when I help my daughter Brody navigate a world which is not often welcoming to people with disabilities. My proudest moments come from watching my son Julian recognize a need for his own advocacy and his natural willingness to get into action. I desperately want to make this world a better place for them. To be an advocate, you don't need to speak in front of large crowds or be a big fundraiser. You don't even need to look as fierce and intimidating as I do. You simply need to find something you care about, speak up and speak out, and share your passion with others. Most importantly, find your people. Find the like-minded folks who share your passion and join you in your efforts to make a change. I want to thank my biggest cheerleader, my husband, Ben Schutz, for always supporting my efforts, for sharing and championing my passion to make an impact, and for making such a great French press coffee. Thank you so much to those of you who came here tonight to honor me and to be a part of this advocacy journey. And thank you to NCJW for putting on such a great event. And thank you to all the women who are trying to make the world a better place. Let's keep making change together. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Susan Rollinger, and I am co-chair with Edie Rubin of tonight's Fall Focus program on Israel and the media. Congratulations again, Danny, on this well-deserved honor. Before we begin, a little housekeeping. I think all of you received an index card and a pencil. If you have any questions for our speakers, please jot them down and we'll come around and pick them up from you later. We are so pleased to welcome Gil Hoffman, Executive Director of Honest Reporting, as our keynote speaker this evening, and Dr. Ora Peskovitz, President of Oakland University, as our moderator. But first, a word about Honest Reporting. What began as an email of limited circulation, the purpose of which was to, quote, alert recipients of anti-Israel bias, Honest Reporting evolved into the world's premier grassroots media watchdog organization defending Israel against media bias. At its helm is Gil Hoffman, its executive director. Born in Chicago, he is an American journalist and political correspondent who previously served for 24 years as the chief political correspondent for the Jerusalem Post. He is also the former spokesperson of the IDF. And he is also the first speaker to have lectured about Israel in all 50 states. A graduate of Northwestern University's Medill School of Journalism in Chicago, he was named in 2022 as one of the top 100 people who positively influences Jewish life, among others, presidents, prime ministers, and Jewish leaders. Beyond her career as a renowned pediatric endocrinologist, Dr. Ora Peskovitz is now president of Oakland University. She has published more than 190 books and papers. She too is a graduate of Northwestern University, but of its Feinberg School of Medicine. And she was among the first of the university presidents to speak out and condemn the October 7 Hamas attack on Israel. As OU president, please, that is well deserved. As OU president, she is an advocate of free speech as distinguished from unlawful harassment, and in her own words, urges, quote, moral clarity and education by speaking out when unjust, immoral, and evil acts occur that impact our lives, society, and the world. We thank you both for being here tonight, taking part in our program. And now, please help me welcome Gil Hoffman to our podium.
All right, thank you so much, Sue, and thank you, Edie, and thank you, Madam President, and Susan, and all the people involved in this event. Looking forward to speaking soon after to Dr. Ora, who is, we found out our families are very much connected to each other, and it's an honor to be with someone who is doing so much to help Israel in her way. We're both graduates of Northwestern, the university that handled the pro-Hamas anti-Semitic protests worse than any other university in America. And I'm glad to be with someone who's handled it better than any other university in America. So that's very special for me. And as you heard from the introduction that Sue read so nicely, I've had the honor and privilege of speaking about Israel in all 50 states, culminating in a talk in Hawaii in a synagogue that trademarked the word shaloha. And before that, in a synagogue in Alaska that trademarked the words frozen chosen. And I was here for another event in this synagogue about a year ago, right after October 7th. Some of you might have been here. But it was a very, very intense time. You know, and since then, it's only gotten more and more challenging in some ways. While militarily, there have been successes, and it's gotten in some ways easier the longer it's gone on. On the media battlefield, it's only gotten harder. Every single day since October 7th, the world more and more forgets what happened on October 7th. And I know the ladies in this room, you're not going to let it happen because you care so deeply about what's going on in Israel. And as an Israeli, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's my job tonight to get you up to date on what's happening and perhaps to give you a little bit of hope because we've all dealt with enough depressing headlines over the past 13 months. So let me start out by saying Israel is right now and has been now for more than a year facing a war on 10 fronts, facing off against Iran, Hamas in Gaza, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis in Yemen, Iraq, Syria, terror emanating from the West Bank, college campuses, traditional mainstream media, social media, all 10 against 1. And you know what? We can take them. We can handle it. And I'm here to tell you we are having success in all 10, little by little. One thing that I learned from my mother, and this is a place where we appreciate and pay tribute to our mothers with the National Council of Jewish Women, is when there's a challenge, you don't look at the whole mountain. You look at it as every little step being an accomplishment. And there are accomplishments on all 10 battlefields every single day. And I believe it is important to celebrate incremental success. But that being said, if you look at what's going on in Israel and get all your news from the mainstream media, you would be understanding it completely wrong. You would think Israel's so strong and its enemies are so pitiful. It's the opposite. The other side prepared for this war for 16 years, day in and day out. Since the Hamas overthrew the rightful leadership in Gaza, they overthrew. I don't like the word coup so much. I like the word overthrow because they came to power by throwing them off the top of buildings. And since then have been building up Gaza as the ultimate fortress of terror ever created on this earth. And Gaza and Lebanon very similarly. So while the world's money was flowing into Gaza, ostensibly in order to help the Palestinian people, it went underground instead to harm our people. And that's what we got into. So while they prepared day in and day out for this war for 16 years, Israel prepared for this war for not even a single second. We weren't ready at all in any way. And we felt it. I prepared for that last speaking tour before I came to Shir Shalom by meeting with all the top people behind the scenes in Israel. I know that before I speak to a room full of very impressive women, that I have to know my facts and everything. And so I had a briefing with Netanyahu's Netanyahu's national security advisor on Friday, October 6th at 2 p.m. We went through the different threats that Israel was facing. And when we finally got to Hamas, the word that he used to summarize Hamas was restrained. He said, look, they haven't joined the last 3 wars between Israel and Islamic Jihad. He said what they care about now is getting more workers to come into Israel. He suggested maybe they're out of the terror business. Boy, did he get that wrong. 16 hours later, they invaded, murdering, raping, pillaging, and kidnapping. And we have never been less ready. And I'm here to tell you, it could have been even worse because we weren't ready on the northern border either. It was the day after the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War. It was Shabbat. It was Simchat Torah. We had fewer soldiers than ever in our history stationed on the border with Gaza because we were relying on technology, on a very sophisticated fence. We also, though, had fewer soldiers than ever on the border with Lebanon. And we've known for close to a year what was reported in the New York Times 3 weeks ago, which is that Sinwar begged the heads of Hezbollah and Iran to all attack that morning at the same time. Could you imagine if we would have had what killed 1,200 people in southern Israel and the same exact thing going on in the north? They could have easily occupied whole towns in northern Israel and kidnapped people just as much as what happened in the south. And could you imagine if the attacks from Iran that happened on April 15th and October 1st would have also happened that morning? That's not something that we could have handled. And we really need to be thankful to the ordinary people of Israel who, when the attacks started happening, immediately took action, drove down south in their pajamas with their own personal weapon and fought the fight. Didn't wait to be commissioned into the IDF. If they didn't do that, the infiltrators could have gotten all the way to Tel Aviv. They could have gotten to Dimona, where we may or may not have a nuclear facility, according to foreign sources, where my uncle Shmulik works, although he may or may not exist. And people don't really understand how even worse it could have been. So what's going on right now is since the successful assassinations of the heads of Hamas and Hezbollah, and since the pager attacks got the Hezbollah where it counts, there's renewed confidence in Israel. People in Israel have their heads held high again. We were reminded of our far reach, of our creativity, of our ingenuity, and we're being strong against all odds. It's really, really hard. We've had 23 soldiers killed over the past week. Each and every one of them is a world that's gone. And 56 orphans. It's horrible. But we also showed that we're not afraid to even hit the heads of the octopus, not just the tentacles, to go and attack in Iran and show the long arm of Israel hitting the missile batteries, hitting the air defense systems, warning them that we can now easily come back even easier than before now that the defense systems are down. 80% of their capability of attacking Israel with missiles is now gone. It's not going to be able to be restored for a couple years, except if the Russians want to, give them, but they need those missiles for Ukraine, right? So that's not going to be happening. Iran, we're finding out more and more and more, was hurt significantly by the Israeli strike on Saturday. And that gives hope. That gives hope that this war is going in the right direction, that it will eventually end for the betterment in a situation where Hamas and Hezbollah are no longer in power, for the betterment of the people of Israel, for the people of Lebanon, and for the people of Gaza as well. I've been to Gaza 4 times. My first trip to Gaza happened back when I was 18 years old. I went on a program between high school and college for a year in Israel, and one of the perks of the program was that they took us for a weekend to the Palm Beach Hotel. I know when you think of Gaza, you don't really think of white sandy beaches, but they're there. And there's a lot of potential to Gaza, just was never realized. My second trip to Gaza was as a journalist. I followed around the Israeli politicians wherever they went, and they went to visit Yasser Arafat, the Palestinian leader. And I remember it like it was yesterday for a couple of reasons. First of all, they made us leave our cell phones in the entrance to Arafat's palace because Israel had used cell phones as remote controls to kill terrorists. And now we do it with pagers too. And on the way out, I forgot to take back my phone. And an Israeli general and a Palestinian general who hadn't met in months met that day to get back my phone. I tell this story to young people, and they're shocked. How can you leave your phone? In Israel, there are actual public service announcements on the radio that say, don't leave your baby in the car. Put your phone next to your baby so you won't forget your baby. The other reason why I remember it like it was yesterday was because halfway through the meeting with the Palestinian leader, the journalists were kicked out of the room so he could meet alone with the politicians. And the New York Times lady didn't leave. She was kind of short, so she pretended to be the daughter of one of the members of Knesset. And as I'm leaving, I look back and I see Arafat giving her a big kiss on the forehead. And I remember thinking, I would rather die than get kissed by that man. And I lost a little respect for the New York Times already then. My third time in Gaza was as a soldier. I served in an artillery unit and a combat unit, but then for my reserve duty, I transferred into the spokesman's unit of the Army because I wanted to use my experience and my skills and my degree from the top journalism school in the world to help Israel against its enemies. But I didn't get called up for Israel against its enemies. I got called up for the Hitnatkut, the withdrawal from Gaza. And my job was to take around VIP journalists to show them who, what, when, and where, never why. And that's for politicians. And so I took around a journalist from the New York Times together with a journalist from Fox. Don't worry, they got along. They were even married and still are. Opposites attract sometimes, but don't try this at home. And I remember how they talked about how Gaza could become the Singapore of the Mediterranean. And it still could have until October 7th at 6:25 a.m. You know, and then right after Israel withdrew from Gaza, I came here to this synagogue on a speaking tour. And, you know, when I came back last year, Rabbi Moskowitz was here. He's got a funny sense of humor. He greeted me at the door with the words, "Gil Hoffman, the last time you were in my synagogue, you said Gaza would become the Singapore of the Mediterranean. Boy, did you get it wrong." And I said, "Don't shoot the messenger." But it's a pity rabbis have such good memories. It's a problem. So I didn't want to go back to Gaza, but I came back. I came back this February, right ahead of a speaking tour. I had called up my cousin who was the commander of the ground forces in Khan Yunis, and I asked him how things were going in Gaza, and he said, "Why don't you just come and see for yourself?" I said, okay. He said, "Just get permission from the IDF." So I called up the right person at the IDF, asked to go into Gaza, and he said, no. And then I kind of begged, so he said, try back in a couple days, and so I did. And I asked really nicely, can I come into Gaza tomorrow morning? And he said, no. The chief of staff of the army is coming in tomorrow to Khan Yunis. He's more important than you. And then I had only one day left before my speaking tour. And I begged him, I said, I'm not worried about going into Gaza. I'm going to UC Berkeley, where it's really scary. And I don't even remember why they told me no. But I called up my cousin all dejected. They're not letting me in. And he gave me the ultimate Israeli response. Screw them, they won't know. And the following morning, I went into Gaza. And I got to see what we were really up against. 80% of the homes in Gaza had some kind of terror infrastructure. 80%. 100% of the schools, hospitals, playgrounds, and cemeteries. That's what we were up against. In southern Lebanon, it's 100% of the homes too. And I'm really glad I got to see it for it myself. But understand, it takes time to remove all that. You know, sometimes it might take an hour to put up a sukkah, but it takes a month to take it down, right? Well, we are going through Gaza and southern Lebanon right now and removing their ability to attack us again. I'm sorry that it has taken 382 days so far. But we needed it. And we still need a little more. We need the world to be patient. I wish this could have been a 4-day war, like other wars in Gaza have been, where the world media put pressure on the world leaders who put pressure on Israel to end the war prematurely before they accomplished anything. In this war, that has not happened, in part because we've needed to do what we've done. The world saw what happened on October 7th. The world knows that we have to defeat terror or it'll get stronger in their countries. The world saw how we went from being super divided in Israel to Yachad Ninatzeach, to be united the way we've been. But I think a lot of the other reason why this war has been allowed to go on as long as it's had to is because the pressure from the world media hasn't been able to come because of the way the media has looked in this war. And because of the way the media has been fought against in this war rather successfully. I'll start with the IDF. Okay? The IDF used to not get it. I'll take you back in history. When an Israel speaker says they'll take you back in history, they usually mean 3,000 years. I'm going to go back all the way to May of 2021. There was a war in Gaza, and Israel destroyed a tower that was known as the Associated Press Tower, and they gave an hour for everybody to leave. It looked terrible. It was filmed from every possible angle. We got really, really bad press. And the IDF didn't even bother telling the world, by the way, there was the cyber tower of Hamas. It was jamming Iron Dome, and taking it down saved countless lives, because they didn't care about what the world was saying. They only told the world why we did it 2 weeks later, when the war was over and nobody was paying any attention. Fast forward to this war. Remember how 10 days after it began, the world started saying that we had bombed on purpose a hospital in Gaza, killing exactly 500 people, and they knew within minutes that 312 of them were women and another 130 of them were children, even though there had been a building that came down not much before that in Florida called Surfside, where they didn't know how many people were dead for a month. But the world bought these numbers from Hamas as if they were gospel from Jesus. Well, this time the army did care. The chief of staff of the army and the commander of the Air Force did not sleep that night until they proved beyond a reasonable doubt to the world that we did not do it. They found Iron Dome radar that proved that it came from a rocket that fizzled from the cemetery next to the hospital, landing in the parking lot, killing about 20 people, which is a tragedy, but certainly not 500. They couldn't email the radar down, so they drove it in order to CNN headquarters to make sure that they would provide the proof, so the world wouldn't be able to say that about us. Of course, the reports were very damaging. The phrase that I spoke in New Orleans that day, was you can't get the toothpaste back into the tube. But I think as bad as Israel looked, the world media looked worse. And it's been that way since then, in part because of the people, ordinary people in America, who are fighting for Israel on that media battlefield, which is the key to winning on the military battlefield. Let's see what we have in this room. How many of you have posted something pro-Israel on social media since October 7th of last year? Wow, almost all of you. Julian, Brody? You're not on TikTok or something? Thank you. Thank you for all you've done. Let's see what else we have here. How many of you are on Facebook? Almost all of you. How many of you are on Instagram? Only maybe half. How many of you are on X, formerly known as Twitter, or used to be? You're ashamed. That's okay. How many of you are on Telegram? Just me and Hamas? How many of you are on Snapchat? So two people want to see what their kids are doing. I get that. Okay. And how many of you are on TikTok? TikTok is important. TikTok is a very important fight for Israel. The cantor of the synagogue is usually on TikTok. And how many of you are on LinkedIn? Yeah, LinkedIn counts. It's where the Jews have a majority. It's a safe space. And how many of you are on none of them? Wow. How do you see your grandchildren? Or how do you, in person? That's nice. You're blessed. But how do you spy on them to know who they're dating? Oh, okay. So soon. All right. So I appreciate what all the digital warriors in the room have been doing to help Israel. My organization, Honest Reporting, I really appreciated what Sue said about at the beginning. We've been doing our part too. As she said, we've been around a long time. 24 years, actually. It was founded during the Second Intifada. You can't see this from far away, but this is a picture of a bloodied boy with a menacing-looking soldier on top of him. And the New York Times said that this was a Palestinian boy who was harmed by the soldier. And then his father saw the picture in America in the New York Times, and he said, that's my son. His name is Tuvia. He's Jewish. And the soldier, who is Druze, not Jewish, saved his life from a menacing Arab mob. And so that led to an email group being formed where people shared all kinds of things that the media reported about Israel wrong. And then when I joined 2.5 years ago, I made us a lot more aggressive. You know, I had a good job following around the Israeli politicians. I got to know our prime ministers very well. I had a front row seat to watch history as it happens. But when I got the opportunity to lead the fight for Israel on the media battlefield, I joined. I jumped at the chance. And so since my amazing CEO, Jackie Alexander, women-run organizations are the best ones, right? Joined 2.5 years ago. We have gotten 12 Hitler and Hamas-praising anti-Semitic journalists either suspended, reassigned, or fired, including 3 from AP, 3 from CNN, and 3 from the New York Times. Thank you. And we have gotten, more timely, more focused on social media in order to make sure that the journalists are held accountable. And that's been true in this war too. One of the journalists that we got fired from the New York Times for praising Hitler was rehired a year later on October 8th of 2023. Until we wrote about it, and then people started asking on social media, how could the New York Times rehire a Nazi to cover a war of annihilation against the Jews? That's what we're up against. And right after that, in November, we asked, how did the photographers get there so early, taking the iconic pictures of this war? Were they tipped off? Were they embedded with Hamas? And later on, we found pictures of them with Yehia Sinwar. We found a video of the photographer for Reuters who took their picture that was the cover photo of their photos of the year of 2023. He posted an Instagram live video on the afternoon of October 7th, telling the people of Gaza, you got to come in. I've been here all day in a settlement called Sderot. As they've been kidnapping the men into Gaza, we've been doing whatever we want to do with the women. And that scumbag could have won a Pulitzer Prize. But we did this campaign saying, don't give the prize to infiltrators and Hitler praisers. And then, even though his media outlet, Reuters, did win the International Photography Pulitzer Prize, we found out that they did not submit any pictures from October 7th. And when the head of the Pulitzer Foundation was asked, why are there no pictures from October 7th? Was it a slow news day? She said that the Reuters people decided not to because there's this pesky media watchdog that asked about both ethical and physical boundaries that were crossed that day. Yeah, thank you. No, but social media, though, is what matters too, because that's where the young people are getting their news nowadays. I'll start a sentence in a way that I never thought I would before. When we were young and we wanted a basic fact, where did we look? Encyclopedias. Julian, have you ever seen or heard of something called an encyclopedia? Okay, he's seen it, good. Nowadays, if you want a basic fact, what do? We Google it. But young people, more than half of them, don't use Google as their search engine. They use TikTok. And if you TikTok, and that is a verb, if you TikTok, what is Zionism? It's very different than what happens when you Google it. When you Google it, the answers are relatively tame. But if you TikTok it, you get something with a hashtag Free Palestine or a hashtag Allahu Akbar, kill the Jews. So that's very scary. We have to be fighting this fight on social media. And with honest reporting, 4 million people saw our stuff in 2022, 4 million in a year. In 2023, we upped it to 4 million every month. And in 2024, 8 million every month. We have to. We all have to be doing our part in order to try as we can to have as much success as possible. And so what can you do? That's what people want to know. The question I've gotten on this trip, more than any question, has been something like this. I have been posting things that are pro-Israel on Facebook for a year, and I never get more than 10 likes. And then I post a picture of my grandson looking cute in a Halloween costume, and I get 1,000. So I'm here to tell you, just as many people saw what you posted about Israel as that kangaroo costume. And you are having an impact, and what you're doing every day matters. Please, keep on doing it. If you haven't listened to anything I've said here tonight, if you can tune in for only a minute, my advice to you, she's listening, my advice to you is the most important thing you can do to help Israel is to be a mensch, to be a good person. Because if you are, then you'll be trusted as a source of information by your friends and your likers and your friends of your friends and your likers of your likers and your followers of your followers. And then you'll make an impact. If you're not on social media, you read articles online, talk back to them. There are places, underneath the article where you can write things and correct them. I know it seems like this really uphill battle and whatever. There's a lot more of them than there are of us. We're David fighting Goliaths. But you never know when you're going to have what I call an Esther moment, where you're in the right place at the right time and making an impact. And Esther is the model for us, National Council of Jewish Women. Yeah, Esther, women saved the Jewish people dozens of times in history, not just one. And we have to really appreciate that. So we have to learn from her. Now, if you don't happen to have 100,000 followers on Twitter or 75,000 on Instagram, then send them to me if you see something wrong. You know, and we'll get it changed behind the scenes or shame them on social media as best as we can. How many of you have canceled a subscription to a media outlet for being too anti-Israel? So, only a few of you. It's interesting. In New Jersey, 100% of the people raise their hands because they say, how many of you have done that 3 times? And they all raise their I think it's wrong, with all due respect to the people who raise their hands. I want you to read as much as you can, being the most pro-Israel media consumers in Michigan. And then when you see things that are wrong, I want you to let me know so we can get it fixed, so we can do what we can to make things better. Because, you know, we could just be resting on our laurels and scream at CNN all day, even though we know it can't hear us. We could have done that. But we decided, no, we want to impact the future for the better. We want the young people. We want to reach out to the people on Instagram and on TikTok because they're the leaders of tomorrow. And we want to help them get the truth. We want that to help Israel be better and America be better. So I want to thank everyone for doing their part and for being the role models that you are. Danny, it's amazing. You inspired me with what you said before and with what you've been doing. You know, you're a role model as a father of daughters. You're a role model for them. So thank you. Thank you for sharing your evening with little old me. And I wish you all nothing but success in the future.
How about now? Okay. You may have to turn yours on too, Gil. Okay. First of all, I want to thank all of the fantastic organizers here at NCJW. This is not my first time with you. You may remember that I've been invited to be with you before, and I love all of you here, so thank you very much for including me. I'm Aura. Danny, congratulations, Mazel Tov to you. Very well deserved. You're an inspiration to all of us. And Gil, I just have to say, you're amazing. What an incredible story you've shared with us. Let's give Gil another round of applause. And it's really an honor to have Gil actually as a graduate of my alma mater too. If you heard, I graduated from Northwestern's medical school, although my daughter is also a graduate of Medill. You know, I do think it would be great if we just started with just you telling us, how is it, you can't hear, okay. I think it would be great if you start by telling us, how is it that you left Medill at the ripe age of 22 on your own and made the decision to go to Israel on your own, join the IDF, and make Aliyah? And I'd just like to start with that because you're such a remarkable person. that I think just hearing your story would be just a great place for us to start.
That's so nice, Aura. Thank you for asking. I was made in America with all Israeli parts. And my parents were always watching news from Israel. And maybe I'd be healthier if I watched cartoons like the other kids, but I watched Nightline. And since we always cared about the news, that made me want to live in Israel and be a part of the history as it happens. And so the people who graduated together with me from the journalism school at Northwestern, I think I have a much more exciting life than any of them, except for the guy who worked for ESPN. So I'm within 3 months after graduating, I moved to Israel, and within a year got promoted at the Jerusalem Post to covering politics. And since then, I haven't gotten much sleep.
Well, that's certainly true, because those of us who have subscriptions to Honest Reporting know that you are constantly working to dispel myths and misinformation, and you've clearly been doing a mitzvah for all of us by doing that. You shared a couple of the stories, the key stories that you've really been able to dispel, important ones. I wonder if you might tell us a few others that have been so important, especially in the past year. I've followed some of them, but not everybody has heard them. And I think it would be very inspirational. I read one just this week that I thought was particularly interesting. But maybe you could tell one or two others that are so amazing, that are in the public domain, and that people believe if they read the New York Times, if they read Reuters, if they're watching Fox News, and then you come forward and say, that's not true.
Wow. So we have only 3 writers. We depend on people around the world that are watching, who send things in. We're a really small 501c3 charity. And so 3 days into the war, people were watching CNN, and they hear one of the top anchors say, Gaza has 9 million people who are being pummeled by Israeli airstrikes in one of the most densely populated areas on earth. Okay, that was 6 seconds. How many lies were there in those 6 seconds? I mean, how many, he said 9 million people live in Gaza. How many million people live in Gaza? 2 million. So CNN was off by only 7 million people. Is Gaza one of the most densely populated areas on earth? Not even close. Not in the top 100. The most densely populated areas on earth are Hong Kong and Manila. New York is up there, but not Gaza. Okay? Just this past week, we corrected a newspaper that lots of people read in England called the Daily Mirror. They wrote about the hostages, which is a relief that anyone's still writing about the hostages, but they referred to them as being under Hamas care. And I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Today, the BBC referred to Tel Aviv as the capital of Israel. Just yesterday, there was a terrorist that drove a truck into a group of people and killed and injured dozens of them. And it referred to it as a truck attack, as if the truck, tried to hurt people, not the driver. And so this is happening day in and day out, and we have to keep the media on our toes. One more example. We found an interview that the bureau chief of Reuters in Beirut gave to a local Beirut paper that I'd never heard of called the Beirut Banyan. And she said that they're being more careful than ever in what they post and what they send around the world because they know they're being watched by media watchdogs like Honest Reporting.
Amazing. Well, these are some of the examples. Somebody asked a question that I had read this week, too. I think it was today's New York Times about the 65 doctors. Would you like to elaborate on that story? Or maybe, I don't know if you were one of the reporters that got it. You've been traveling. So,
so the New York Times reported as if there were 65 doctors in Gaza that had been saying all kinds of things that about what Israel did, and it turned out the experts were wrong. The people were not real doctors, and they were people who supported terror and everything. They got duped into a story that was easily disproven.
yeah. Okay, people want to know, a lot of people have asked a question, and I'm going to try to consolidate some of your questions, since some of you have asked various versions of this. Your thoughts about the hostages?
It's personal, because we all know people, but Hirsch Goldberg Pullen and his father John sat in back of me in synagogue for many years, and John's mother, the amazing Leah Pullen, who is involved in the National Council of Jewish Women, and she taught together with my father for many years. So did her mother, by the way. So our families have been close for decades. And I even wrote an article for the New York Post that explained how Hirsch became the Anne Frank of this war, and why there needed to be an Anne Frank. Just like 6 million is impossible to fathom, so is 1,200 people being killed in one day. And we're getting up to 1,800 total. Sometimes you need what we call in journalism a blade of grass in order to understand what's really going on. You've seen my ribbon. I see a lot of people have ribbons here. Mine might be a little different.
Yours has a heart in it.
Correct. You noticed that. Very observant. It's good that a doctor's observant. There are different campaigns. The main one, with the hashtag Bring Them Home Now, was taken over by anti-Netanyahu, anti-judicial reform activists, unbeknownst to most of the hostage families. And so when it became too political, then there were right-wing people who then formed a rival organization that said, instead of bring them home now, obliterate Hamas now in order to bring them home now. And then there were others who said, this is disgusting, we don't want to be part of either side politically, we want to have a completely apolitical effort to bring the hostages home. And so they started a different hashtag, Let Them Go Now. And they're the ones that have the heart inside the ribbon. And they're trying to change it because they said bring them home is on us, it's on Israel. The pressure needs to be on the world, on Qatar, on Turkey, on Egypt, whoever can really put pressure on Hamas. So this is not only a statement to get the hostages freed, it's also a statement that says we want to stay away from politics. And in that regard, Honest Reporting and the National Council of Jewish Women are very much in that same boat, especially in the week ahead.
So how does that compare to this, which says Achshav?
That's fine. You're okay.
No, I'm just curious, because I know some other people I saw come in with this message, which means, for those of you that see this one, which means now.
So now is in both. Everybody agrees on now.
And someone has asked here, and I don't know if you want to answer, if you have an opinion about what will it take to get the hostages out, and do you have a you're a journalist and not a politician, but do you have a suggestion of what it would take?
Well, Netanyahu spoke in a meeting behind closed doors today at the Knesset, which is a very good way of making sure everybody will know what you said. And he said, I read in the newspaper that Egypt was offering us a deal that if we have a ceasefire for 48 hours, 4 hostages will be released. He said, I'd jump at that. I wish it were true. He said that since Sinwar passed away, that any leaders that emerge in Hamas will try to be more Sinwar than Sinwar. And that they are only stiffening their positions. So that's where the pressure has to be. The world needs to be doing whatever it can. If America, the funding for Hamas comes from Qatar. If America would immediately say, we're taking our Navy out of Qatar until every hostage is home, or at least the 10 Americans who are left in Gaza, which 4 may still be alive, please God. If America would say, we're going to make it illegal for an American university to have a branch in Qatar, I think they'd be home a lot faster.
Someone has asked what you think Netanyahu's exit plan is from Gaza.
Netanyahu ain't into exit plans. Netanyahu's into staying as long as he can, in whatever he can. Netanyahu's birthday was last week. He turned 75 years old. 75 years young. His father died at the age of 102. So he's going to try to stay in politics for another 27 years. His father, and if he passes the abolish death bill to eliminate death, he could be our emperor for hundreds of years if he had his way. The exit strategy hasn't even been discussed yet.
What about Lebanon?
I think he's aware, as the son of a historian, that if you stay too long in Lebanon, very bad things happen. And so we're accomplishing whatever we can and whatever we need to in order to bring thousands of people back to their homes. Okay, now let's give you the honest truth. January 19th is the latest day that this war could last. I wonder why. You didn't get it?
The inauguration.
It doesn't matter who wins. It has to end by then. Both have said that it needs to end now. They're both wrong. But one of them is going to be the President of the United States sometime. And we have to end it by then.
I think this is an interesting question. Somebody said, I stopped watching John Oliver because of his attitude. How do you cancel that?
Do you think you cost John Oliver any money by stopping to watch him? I mean, you can't listen to him when he makes fun of other things that don't have to deal with the Jews. I mean, I watched John Oliver on the treadmill. I almost fall over laughing, But yeah, he's really wrong about Israel. And every time he's really wrong about Israel, we write an article in Honest Reporting and send it out to the world, and we make sure he sees it. We make sure his Jewish agent gets it and shows it to him. Because maybe he'll learn. We haven't given up on him.
Many people in this room have children and grandchildren who are struggling with having views that are different than theirs. They're wondering about what some people call tikkun olam Jews, and their children are struggling with the humanitarian crisis in Gaza and not knowing how to speak to them about our values of justice and mercy, Jewish values. How do we speak to them about that?
You finally asked the hardest question that I've gotten on this tour. So first of all, sign them up for the emails of Honest Reporting. Go to honestreporting.com and put in their name and their email address without asking their permission. And at least then they'll get some information that they might click on by mistake and learn. But now to answer more seriously. There's no greater humanitarian cause and no more humanitarian people than the people of Israel. And we need them to know that because it fits directly with what they believe in. We want to help the people of Gaza who've been under Islamic fundamentalist rule now for 17 years. We want to help the people of Lebanon who've been taken over by terrorists, who've taken over their homes and put rocket launchers in them. Don't the people of Gaza and the people of Lebanon deserve better? I tried to explain this when I went to the encampment at DePaul University. I told them, I came to you straight from Gaza, which is true. I really did. And I have a message for you from the people of Gaza. They want Hamas gone in order to have their lives be better. I've looked at your demands from your encampment. You're asking for DePaul University to stop buying computers with an Intel chip inside because it was made in Haifa by Jews and Arabs together? The people of Gaza couldn't care less. They want Hamas out of their lives. I don't think they liked me in that encampment. They stopped giving me knafe. But we are the ultimate humanists. We are the ones who are improving the lives of the downtrodden. And we are the ultimate liberal cause. We are the ultimate environmentalists. We are the ultimate gay rights activists. And we are the ultimate women's rights activists. And of course, we had a female head of state, before almost any country in the world. And we can be very proud of that.
Another person asks, so along those lines, we keep hearing that Israel is preventing aid from getting to the people in Gaza. How do you help us understand and show people around the world, and especially these young people who say that we are committing a genocide, we're starving the people of Gaza? Can you help dispel that? And can't you do more to show our children that that is not the case?
Or you've asked a math question. And I'm saying it's a math question because you need to look at the real stats, which Israel puts out every single day. Those of you, three people in the room, who raised their hand before when I asked if you were on Twitter, you can follow on Twitter COGAT, which is the Coordinator of Government Activities in the Territories. It's at COGAT Online. Every day they say, we have facilitated 300 trucks coming into Israel from this entrance, into Gaza, from this entrance, and another 100 trucks from that entrance. And they also reveal how many trucks have remained unloaded on the Gazan side of the border, waiting for the UN to distribute it, or the Hamas to steal it. And that's what's been happening. We've let in we passed 1 million tons of aid a couple months ago. And there's always tons and tons that are waiting on the other side of the border because the United Nations is so ineffective in helping the people of Gaza. They're very good at helping them learn how to hate people, but they're not very good at making sure they get fed.
One person asked here, how do we get our young people to read more? But when I heard your answer, when you were speaking, you said, our young people are not going to start reading papers. They have a different way to learn, to get information. They're going to use social media, TikTok, Instagram. So it's not likely that they're going to go back and start reading newspapers and watching Fox or CNN. Is that right?
You're exactly right. I mean, my answer, how did I get my daughter to read? Frog and Toad. Frog and Toad finally got my daughter to read. And now she won't put books down, so that was my way. But no, the answer we learn at the Seder, the ultimate Jewish educational experience. And what does it say in the Seder? Chanoch hanar al pi darko. Teach your children where they are, according to their path.
Yeah.
And so if your children happen to be looking at their phones all day, as some children do, well then make sure that they can get their pro-Israel content on their phones and their iPads and their whatevers, their watch now.
You have to provide the information where they're going to find it.
Absolutely. Look, there was a mission to Israel from one of the Jewish federations, and I briefed that group, and right before I spoke, the head of the Jewish Federations of North America spoke. He was talking about what their organization is doing, helping Israel in the war, which was great and everything, but then he said, we're not fighting for Israel on TikTok, like he said it like a joke. And I wanted to cry, because we need to be on TikTok. That's where the young people are. It's hard because there's 54 anti-Israel things for every pro-Israel thing on TikTok. The algorithm, the Chinese have made it work against us. But that's not a reason to give up the fight. We Jews, we don't shy away from an uphill battle. I want all of you to go home and get on TikTok. I know that if my homework to you is number 1, get on TikTok, and number 2, call your bubby. Those are the most important things that you can do right now. In Judaism, it says there's a commandment, midvar sheker tirchak, meaning make the lies be pushed away. It's an active mitzvah.
Did Sinwar's death in any way change the calculations, and do you think that it is going to speed the end?
Yes. Right now, there's no one of his caliber around to lead Hamas. His main trait was defiance. You know, he didn't wait for Hezbollah in Iran to attack. Hamas had attacked Israel in still terrible ways, but more measured ways in the past. And he said, no, he's going to attack in such a way that would bring on what it has brought on to the people of Gaza. He was one of the most evil people in history. He needed to go, and the world is a much better place without him. And yes, it will bring the war ending sooner, because there's no one to be leading that fight anymore.
This individual says that the media have been taken by the Israelis to see the tunnels, and yet they still report that Israel says that the tunnels are here, and that instead of saying what they actually have seen, in other words, instead of reporting what they're seeing, they say Israel says.
That's another good thing that we go correct every other day. You know, with Hamas, they say, okay, the local health officials in Gaza, or the Hamas health ministry, as if they really ever had one, has been reporting this, and they reported it as fact. I'm telling you, the Palestinians have a health ministry. It's in Ramallah. It's run by the Palestinian Authority. And October 8th, they offered their services to the Hamas. They turned it down. So the information you're getting out of Gaza, out of a dictatorship, is not something that can be believed. People need to understand that the top journalists from around the world have been reporting from Israel, whereas from Gaza, they don't have that freedom of the press. And so who's reporting from Gaza? Ordinary Gazans with cell phones. Israel made a controversial decision to not let journalists go into Gaza except when they were embedded. And in retrospect, I don't know how smart that was, because it's made anybody with a cell phone in Gaza a reporter. So you need to be educated news consumers.
People want to know if they see something on television that they feel is wrong. How do they get in touch with you or let you know so that you can help correct the misinformation. And the same is true about any false information. What do they need to do to get in touch with you? Write this down if you can, or
Or
put it in
you're
your
allowed to take out
phones.
your phone.
Yep. Because I've gotten several questions from people asking, how do they get in touch with you so that you can help correct misinformation that they hear, that they see, that they read, because this is your best source.
I have some flyers if I'm allowed to give them out. This is an event of a different organization. I respect that. So thank you, Edie, for... Oh,
Okay.
that's even better. Thank you, Susan. So, so I'll have Susan send out. It's action@honestreporting.com. Anytime you see anything in the mainstream or social media that's egregious, please send it our way.
We can be your eyes and ears for you.
We
Yes.
depend on eyes and ears all around the world, and there's no better place to have eyes and ears than here in Michigan.
I only received one last question, but if any of you have any additional questions, you should send them in here, because I've only received, I see one more coming, so please get it our way. This question is, what did you think about when the media inspected the hospital in Beirut for the $500 million? And
They what for?
there was a $500 million
Oh,
that was supposed
yeah.
it was supposed to be
Yeah.
beneath the hospital in Beirut.
But then they went
and
in
then
the wrong
they
place.
went there and they said they didn't find it.
Okay, so the spokesman of the Army gave a press conference in English where he said that there's this absurd amount of money and it's under the hospital in a bunker that was created by Nasrallah, and that people can go and get it because it was stolen from the people of Lebanon. And then the Hezbollah did a press conference where they tried to show journalists, look, it's not there. But he did it where it wasn't there. Instead of doing it, the entrances are from other buildings around it. And so that ended up being this really big farce, that the world fell for this stunt that the Hezbollah had done.
Okay.
You have a last couple questions?
We have two more here, and this is last call for questions. I actually don't understand this question. What did you think of Slingshot? I don't know what
Is that an alcoholic brand of something?
I don't understand the question. So if you asked it, could you stand up and ask it? Yes.
Thank you for pointing that out. I'm going to check it out.
And I didn't hear of it either, so I apologize.
You learn something every day.
So it's go ahead, say it again. Slingshot.com. It counteracts Arabic media. But to counteract inaccurate information from Arabic media. And is it effective? So Gil needs to look into it.
I'm going to check it out as soon as the baseball game is over.
Okay. And there are two questions on this card. They're both interesting. What do you think about the New York Times in general? I'll let you answer that one first, and then I'll ask you the last question, which I actually asked you already, but I'm going to ask you again.
Sure. Okay. Look, the New York Times is a biblical prophecy come true. The prophet Bilam said that the Jews would be an Am Levadad Yishkon, that we would be a nation that dwells alone, that's isolated. But the second part of it is that we would be a people that don't care what people say about us. So that part they got wrong. We are under a microscope more than any other people in the world. especially by the newspaper of record of America. You'd think that we were the 7th Bureau of New York after the 5 in Boca, because they cover what we do so much. They've got 10 reporters in Israel right now. I think that's more than they have in Staten Island. And so we know that we need to be more careful because we're being scrutinized so much, because we're under that microscope. And so they have some journalists who are better than others. There's a man named Ronen Bergman, who's Israeli and has wonderful ties in the security establishment in Israel, who's broken a lot of the scoops of this war. And everything he says, he writes. I encourage people to read it. And then there's a woman named Raja Abudrahim, who was an anti-Israel activist in college, and now she's covering the Palestinians. And what she writes is atrocious. And they get things wrong in the New York Times on Israel every single day, which calls into question what they're reporting about other things too. I don't know if this is the last question, but people always ask me, is there any American media outlet you can trust?
No, but you can answer that.
The answer is, I've thought it's no for not long before I was at Honest Reporting. Because what they do, the foreign media, they send somebody to Israel for 3 years to be a correspondent. And by the time they know Hebrew or Arabic, they send them off to Moscow or to Washington or to Beijing because they say they want them to report with fresh eyes. I never got that. I think nowadays, with the global world, you shouldn't have to rely on any American media outlet for your news about Israel. You should rely on the people who live in Israel, who've been building up connections to get the stories for 20 years. They're the ones who you should trust for your news about Israel. And your local Detroit newspapers and TV stations and radio stations, that's where you should get your sports and your weather and your traffic and hope that it's right.
Everyone should read Ronen Bergman's book, if you haven't, Fight and Kill First, because that actually would explain, a lot of what's happening now. I can't wait for him to write about the pagers. I think that will be his next book, if I predict that right.
Sure.
Okay, so my last question is a little bit, take some editorial license on this question that was asked here. What is your prediction and what is your hope for the coming American election?
First of all, I want to praise you for not bringing that up the entire time. I was very impressed. So I certainly have no prediction, and I'm not going to give a political opinion to say what I'd hope for or who I'd hope for. But since this is National Council of Jewish Women... Wait. I'm
No.
not going to. Don't worry. I'm not going anywhere near there.
No, it was a question that was asked. So
Wait.
he knows not to.
Since this is, I'm a 501c3 too. Since this is a National Council of Jewish Women event, I want to say something wise that I learned from my mother. She said that throughout the history of the Jewish people, good things come out of bad things. And she's right. From the Holocaust came the state of Israel.
It's a hope.
From slavery came freedom. From COVID came Zoom that you don't have to go to work anymore. Or to temple. And so this election that's been so disgusting, no matter who wins, I hope and I pray that it ends up being good for Israel and for America. Thank you.
Amen. Amen. Thank you, everyone.
You never go wrong when you quote your mother.
Wait. Yeah. I think we should give this wonderful speaker a round of applause. He was spectacular.
Thank you, Gil and Aura, very much. I'm Eva Hepner. I have the honor of serving as one of the vice presidents for NCJW Michigan. Well, thank you, Gil, for such an interesting and very insightful presentation on this important topic of Israel and the media. You've given us homework, and I know this group, they will do that homework. So, you know, with the noise of disinformation and misinformation, I think that it is important that we pursue the truth. I'd also like to thank you, Dr. Peskovitz, for your outstanding ability to moderate this evening. Thank you. Again, I'd like to congratulate Danny and her family on receiving the much-deserved NCJW Michigan Advocacy Award. I know with the support of Ben, Brody, and Julian, it's a very important task that you perform every single day. Many thanks to the Fall Focus and Israel Affairs Committee, Chairs Edie Fagenson-Rubin and Sue Rollinger, for their hard work in making this excellent program possible. And thank you to Susan Gertner, our outstanding Executive Director, the wonderful support staff at NCJW Michigan, and the Awards Committee. And my hosts. What? And yes, and thank you to Rosie and Mark Schlussel for hosting Gil overnight tonight. Saving you $500. With the Dunkin' Donuts from Oak Park in hand. And lastly, a special thanks to Shir Shalom for providing this beautiful setting. And especially thank you all for coming tonight and participating in this very important event. Good night. Will you be in time for the game? Bill, what time does the game start? 8:08. Okay, the game's already started. Gotta go. What do you think this is, Michigan football? You both did a great job.